When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everybody. This is Mark Ledlow with the Fearless Mindset Podcast, and I have to say, happy birthday, Marines. I got Dave Shores here joining us from the East Coast with the ALS chapter out there, helping people with ALS. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good, Mark. It's always good to talk to you.
You too, buddy. But yeah, Dave's. We want to do a special memory of Kobe today and the Lakers and the Dodgers. They just won the World Series, so we're going to talk about sports today versus security. So I love sports. That's kind of why I bring Dave on, just to have those conversations.
That is a great thing to do.
You gotta divvy it up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? Sports during this time period has provided a wonderful source of entertainment for everyone when nothing seems to be normal. At least sports can sometimes be cohesive again.
Brings that unity again. Something to look forward to.
I am sorry. I'm getting numerous notifications here, and I cannot stop them on my screen. So I am so sorry.
All right. This is entertaining.
I cannot tell for the life of me why.
This is fun.
Okay, so now we'll go back at it. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Spicing up a little bit. You got to change it up, make it interesting. So let's start talking about the Dodgers. You know, they've hit the World Series. They got some phenomenal pitching, some good defense. What's it looking like? I mean, that's the first time they've won a World Series in a long time.
Yeah, really. I mean, when you date back to the 80s, you know, that's quite a drought because, you know, you think about it, they've had probably the highest payroll in baseball for so many of those years. And, you know, that starts to create that urgency as well. Is it ever going to pay off again? And so, you know, to lead it to the fact that two teams from Los Angeles, both in a year of COVID and upheaval, win a title. It's pretty amazing.
What are the odds of that happening in 1 year? That's craziness.
I can't imagine. I mean, it's obviously happened before, but you know, I guess we call it that things are pretty balanced among a lot of the sports because it's just hard to develop yourself a franchise, a dynasty anymore. And I think baseball is one of those where it is very, very hard to develop a dynasty where the same teams going back to the World Series every year. So if you think about what the Dodgers have done over the last several years, they've done about as close to anyone of creating themselves a dynasty. And then if you do that, you got to top it off with at least winning a title.
Wow. Wild.
At some point.
Exactly. I mean, I thought the New York Yankees had the highest payroll in the country for baseball, but I guess not. I guess the Dodgers do have it.
Yeah, the Dodgers this year were the highest, and the Rays were the lowest, and it squared off between the two teams, the haves and the have-nots in terms of the bottom line to see what you can do. You know, it's all about the talent and how you use it, but the Dodgers obviously found a way to get the ROI in business terms in their favor.
And Sir Magic Johnson's very happy right now, because I think he's part owner of that organization still.
Yeah. No, okay. He is. I mean, you think about it. I mean, he at one point was involved in the Lakers. If you go way back, when you think of what he did in the real estate industry and then opening Starbucks in minority laden areas of Los Angeles, it is amazing. You know, the guy, you know, some guys know exactly not what to do because they listen to the wrong people. And then there's other guys like Magic that he just came up with the right formula. Somehow he figured out the art of business using his name and his notoriety as leverage. Yeah, I mean, that's key. Where did he get that knowledge? You think Buss helped him with that? Because Buss seemed like to be the icon of business world. He was just a genius when it came to basketball and business, from what I hear. I think that's a great question. I think, you pick up a lot of things. I think back in their day, Mark, Michael Thompson, who played with Magic there, who was my colleague there in Los Angeles for many years. Michael told the story a lot of times of how they'd be in the terminal waiting for general boarding, just like anybody else. So here's the Dynasty Lakers sitting there waiting in the terminal to be called to the gate. And so life back then was a little bit more normal for them. And so I think that you ended up talking and having to do a lot of things on the side and learning good business principles. That doesn't mean that everybody was good at it, but he, for some reason, found the perfect formula.
He did. And so he's part owner of the Dodgers. Is he has any stake anymore with the Lakers anymore, or is he kind of out of that?
Well, I think he's got somewhat, but sometimes there's some rules that guys get around. And I think that the deal that he made with the Dodgers was a very interesting one. If I remember, I don't remember all the details, but he's very smart with, I think, handing his money over to somebody who wants it. And obviously the Dodgers have done, great things with the investments that they have made over the years, as have the Lakers,
Right.
in knowing what they did with minority ownerships, even during Dr. Buss's days, to be able to build the type of franchise and dynasty that they did.
Okay. Crazy. Now, it's unfortunate Kobe wasn't around to see LeBron pull the win for the Lakers. The year after, it's just ironic, the timing.
Yeah.
That happening.
When the Lakers had to play that deciding game that last night to win that, I just, I thought numerous times during the day how much that would have meant to Kobe, because there's not much you need to say if you're the Lakers in terms of a pregame speech, because I think you pretty well know that if you're lacing up his shoes that they were wearing, or, his brand or whatever, they pretty much knew, even if they hadn't been his teammate, like LeBron had been in the locker room enough with him and had seen the ferocious attitude that Kobe brought. And so I just, in a year that I can't believe that started our year out before COVID, I just don't think you could write a better finish for the Lakers organization to get that. And what's a shame, Mark, is that in history, everyone's going to talk about that being an asterisk year. They will with the Dodgers as well. So both of those teams will be forever laden with people arguing whether or not that was a real championship. But I always say one thing: they all knew the rules going in. All teams were 0-0. And if you got to this point that they set to make the playoffs and win a title, you were the champ. And so you don't get up from a round of a night of poker and complain because that wasn't the same type of game you thought you were going to get into. And so the winner's a winner, and I think that they should not ever be labeled as an asterisk for those championships.
Right. So this gives LeBron his fourth title or four. I can't remember. I think it's 3 or 4 titles.
4, I believe. Yeah.
4. Okay. Wow. And Kobe had 5 titles, right? Because he didn't quite get the 6 like Michael has.
Yeah, he had the 2, then the 3-peat. And so, yeah, a major accomplishment, because you don't just, I think if you're trying to put them and rank them in terms of history, you can't, I don't think, because they all stand on their own. But LeBron's doing it at an older age. And still probably has more in the tank, but he's a different type of person. He's a different type of player than Kobe and Michael. And so I think that, I don't understand why guys can't just sit back and just enjoy it, and say, what, they're one of the top. Why do you have to rank someone as the greatest of all time? Because you can't solve it on the court.
No, you can't. No, not at all. Just body, DNA, chemistry, everything, personality. They're all unique in their own way.
Yeah, and you know what? They learned a lot from each other. So I don't think that they really want to be categorized as one better than the other. I think it's a sign of mutual respect, and I think especially for LeBron, who went through all he did, this year, having to put the team on his back many times. But I think it had to be satisfying to him, because he had heard all the critics, and it becomes increasingly difficult to go to another team. I remember the year when I was with the Dallas Mavericks in 2006, and Shaq and company won in Miami, won the title against the Mavericks. And, for Shaq, that was a really a redemption too, because, you know, when you prove that you can go to another franchise and win, there's probably no greater feeling.
A lot of buying power, just a lot of influence just by doing that. What was the flavor that Jeannie Buss and Kobe had together? What was that unity like? Because I know there was a very strong bond between those two, and what the Busses felt about Kobe, you know, being there for just a kid.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a really good question, Mark, because I think that I think people could learn a lot of business lessons from that relationship. One is, I think that let me give the example. If you and I are going to agree to do something, one of the forms of us making an agreement is just a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, where basically it is legal, but it's not as stressed out as some legal contracts. And so basically, you're saying what you'll do. And I'm saying what I'll do and what we both commit to. And I think that that's what they did in a way. Jeannie, her brothers, and ultimately her father before when he was living, you know, they knew what they had to do, and they didn't have to ask Kobe, and they didn't have to tell him what he needed to do. He just knew that. He grew up in a household, and he grew up in a generation that he just understood that. So I think that that's a business dealing that you don't have to worry about. Yeah, sometimes some labor deals with unions and the players union and the league will get in the way, but you don't ever have to have that conversation again with Kobe. And I think that that's why maybe a lot of people thought he was slighted or should feel slighted at the end. But I think he ended up getting not what he deserved, because you're never going to be able to pay a franchise player like that what they deserve or what they're valued at. So it's very interesting.
And did you have much interaction with the Busses at all, being with ESPN when you were there? What would that look like, being an announcer? Did you guys interface with them much at all?
Yeah, you know what? I only dealt with Mr. Buss only a couple of times, and then when he passed, you know, I attended the funeral and things like that, just to understand and hear the stories of everybody around him. But I enjoyed every minute that I worked with Jeannie, and had numerous business meetings over our contract with the Lakers as a broadcast organization, but always fair. And I know that I'll never forget being on the board there of the ALS Association in California on the Golden West chapter. And I'll never forget, you know, just telling her what I was getting a chance to do, and you know, over lunch, and she just immediately pulled out a checkbook and wrote me a donation. I mean, it's just, you know, that's someone who understands what it's all about, and I think the philanthropic part is something that families like theirs, they don't ever get enough credit for. You know, they're not out there telling people what they've done; they just do it. And that's what really makes the philanthropy world go around, and what helps nonprofits like I do now exist and be successful and serve the patients and mission that you want to do.
Was that the seed back then you saw when you were with ESPN doing what you did in broadcasting? Did that plant a seed in your mind about maybe doing something with ALS down the road? Was that kind of how that developed?
No, I had no idea. You know, I just thought I'd always be in the broadcast management world or doing something. And so I wanted to do something along the line, whether it just be serving on a board or serving on committees for ALS. But now that I get a chance to be a COO, it obviously opens up so many opportunities. But you learn so many lessons from whatever you come from. So, you know, for me, using the leverage of the world of marketing and branding and everything is, I think, something unique that I can try to bring to this organization, and to the way a lot of organizations try to do when they sometimes hire out of the box. You know, I know during my days at ESPN, they would always, you know, hire a new president or someone, and everybody, if they questioned it and it didn't make sense, it made sense to me, because they were bringing in somebody that would completely bring a different vision or a different set of optics than the same old people that had grown up in an organization.
Wow. Okay. I was going to ask you this. What are the biggest challenges you saw when you got in being broadcasting? Was it hard to get the respective players to talk to you? Was that a big challenge? What are the biggest challenges, fears you faced in your career?
Yeah, I think that's another good question, Mark, because you're on a roll. I think the thing is that I'm equating it to when I got in the business in the late '80s. If you're listening to this podcast or watching it, you're thinking of what we've been through now in society with fake news and the media having every possible channel of content interest that there is. But when I came up and started as a news reporter on television and then a TV sports anchor as well, the one thing that you fought for every day was you did not want to ever compromise or lose your credibility, because if you did, you'd be totally disregarded as a reporter. If when I was a sideline reporter for the Cowboys or the Mavericks or the Lakers, you really, I mean, you could make a mistake, but you couldn't really make a mistake, because if you made a mistake in this day and age with social media, that's what people would remember you for. And it's not fair, but it's reality. And so I think that's, I kind of had to have that fair and unbiased. And I know that that's a term that a network uses, but that was really what almost like a creed that we all signed, that we didn't really sign, but that was just an unspoken thing that you just always did growing up in the business.
Yeah, I thought about that, because it must have been hard just to get, people who wanted to talk to you, and especially if you're breaking in the industry in broadcasting, what that was like. And then, like what you say now is everything is also live stream via Facebook, via Twitter, and everything is just simultaneously.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can equate it to a world that you've been in as well, in the security world. There's certain things that, you sign letters of confidentiality and, even if you didn't sign it, you probably just had that inside. You just wouldn't do it. I remember, I remember traveling with the Dallas Cowboys and in his final year, like Kobe did when I was traveling with him, those older players, they didn't mind getting a chance to hang with somebody they liked, because the younger players were just, they were immature. And so I remember a couple of times that Emmitt Smith of the Cowboys and I would just, grab a glass of red wine there in the hotel in another city the night before, just sitting in the corner. And those are the times when I'm not taking a picture. I'm not, going on the pregame show the next day and telling what we talked about. Those are just times when you build kind of the trust, and kind of display, what you're all about, and you're able to find out what they're all about. And those are the times that I'll never regret. Those are the times that I remember much more than when I look in my closet now and realize I didn't really grab that many souvenirs, but those are the ones that I remember the most.
Memory souvenirs.
Yeah. Instead of just, of grabbing a piece of turf or, having an autograph, that just doesn't mean as much to me as those moments that I could remember when Kobe passed. I can remember having conversations or times with him. Those meant so much more as I tried to, kind of reflect on what it meant to lose someone of his stature.
How long of a relationship did you have with Kobe? From how many years did you spend with the Lakers? I think you told me in the last broadcast, but I forgot.
Yeah, no, I spent 6 years, but that relationship had started so many years earlier, because I had met Shaquille O'Neal when he was in college and had interviewed him. And then when he was in the NBA, I would run into him a lot when teams that I was with would play him. And so we would have conversations that I would tape, interviews with him. And, one time at the All-Star game, I was in the locker room getting him, and Kobe was next to him. And he said, this guy pointed to me and said,
"Oh, that's right.
Whatever you do, take care of him." So that's how it started. So when I got to Los Angeles, Kobe had already knew me, and he, I guess he remembered that he was supposed to take care of someone. So, so that
the warm handshake from Shaquille.
Yeah. The warm hug that probably came at one point, but no, that's so those are the moments that you never forget, because, that's really what it's all about, because you see the real side of those guys, and, it doesn't really matter to them how much money they have. They honestly just wanted to get up every day and do their job and win, not lose.
Well, I want to win the champion. That's what they're all playing for, is that big ball championship, the trophy. I know Kobe was probably the most fierce competitor on that Lakers team back then. Who else was? I know Fisher was. Fiercely a 3-pointer. I can remember Fox he was always fouling people.
Yeah.
And Fox was just vicious, very almost the attacker. Phil Jackson would dispatch him to go attack somebody.
Yeah, and I think that, it was really, I think what you're doing is you're trying to think of the role players that were on each and every organization. If you think of the Bulls, you think of the guys that were kind of the glue guys around Michael and Scotty. And then you think of the glue guys like Derek Fisher, like Robert Ory, like Fox. Those guys that they really gained their own stature because they were perfect teammates around. My years there with the Lakers, it would be Metta World Peace, or as we knew him then as Ron Artest.
Right.
But until he changed his name. But, that was the kind of guy that, they knew what their role was. They weren't the superstar of the team. And so they looked, even though they felt like they were probably just as talented as every other guy on the floor, they knew what their role was. And I think if anybody, would have hit Kobe or whatever, Metta would have taken one for the team and got himself tossed out. But, that was an incredible thing to watch when guys really act as teammates to each other.
I mean, just the science of the chess game that Phil was able to orchestrate with all those guys when they played back, when Kobe was around. It's fascinating to me to watch Phil Jackson play chess with these other teams, just destroy organizations with his masterful mind and understanding the game.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. I was always observant, traveling along, and I think a lot of people maybe discredit coaches who are with very talented players, thinking, well, I could do that too, because who could mess that up? But there's something special about the guys like Phil and some others that did it, that they knew what to say, but they also knew what not to say. And that was the times that I reflected on it the most. It was just that look or the way that they just kind of let guys be alone that was sending a message, or just telling them at the last minute, you know what, sleep in tomorrow. We'll not have a practice. They had that extra sense to know when to push and when to pull back. And when I think I told you last time too about, Coach K's that same way. He knows how to let and find the leader on the team, the captain on the team, and let that guy be the guy that gets people together. Not you yelling at him. Let kind of the natural order, like animals, just kind of take over and see what happens. Does that make sense?
That's the definition of creating success in any organization, any business, just in life. Just knowing who your key ally strengths are and just let them do their strengths and function in that strength level.
I think, I always try to equate it to our daily lives. And I think that's where you got the typical terms like micromanage and things like that, because, people, you see coaches that do that. They overcoach, they are coaching like every minute is a title, when the coaching in the preseason and the early part of the season, well, you might make some mistakes, but those mistakes will teach you for the closing lessons. And I think that's when that you've got the perfect organization in the corporate world too, when you get a sense that people are not working in silos and managers aren't micromanaging. They're putting smart people around them and letting them do their job.
Absolutely. Some lessons learned by NBA organizations and sports organizations. I mean, look at Pete Carroll. I mean, the guy's he just did an extension I saw on my app. I'm like, holy cow, another extension? Is he going to retire anytime soon? I'm like, oh. But the stuff he's doing with Russ is crazy. I mean, Russ is just breaking records. They have one bad game with the Bills the other night, and I'm like, whoa. But he just he's putting out the yards.
Well, I mean, that's a perfect example again, is Russ is the type of player like we were talking about. You don't need to tell Russ it's a big game. You don't need to tell him how to act off the field. I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that's where Russ played at NC State before he transferred to Wisconsin. And,
that's right.
One of the things that was the problem here is that the football team wasn't entirely happy that he wanted to play baseball in the baseball season too. And Russell Wilson got drafted, and in the minor leagues, he hit about 270. So he really could have been a great baseball player indeed. So it's those guys that are just they're overachievers. You could find a ton of things when they were drafted, probably what they wouldn't be good at, but then they overcame all those and became better than what you thought.
Yeah, I mean, Russ is saying that. Everybody, I noticed the Sports and Hours on Sunday. They talk about Russ more than anybody, and they'll talk about how Tom Brady is just kind of hanging in there, and then Russ is way up here. And I noticed the difference. It's like a pendulum switch going on.
Yeah, right and now. It really helps someone like Seattle because, if you're a West Coast team, you can very easily be lost in society because, those games are late and you just don't get the type of media attention that the Patriots and the Baltimore Ravens get and everything. And so, Russ has really been a face of the franchise, which during my days in Portland, that's, what we were blessed with on the Trailblazers there to have, a good run of guys who were, they were household names in the NBA, but, they weren't just buried in Portland as afterthoughts.
Now, when you were in Portland, were you there during the Drexler days? Were you there before the Drexler?
I was there the next run when Rasheed Wallace and Damon Stoudemire and Steve Smith and made that run in the Western Conference Finals where they lost to the Lakers in the seventh game and probably would have went on to beat the Pacers in the title, but they blew a 16-point lead in the fourth quarter of the deciding game. So you don't do that, but with Arvydas Sabonis and Scottie Pippen on that team, that was probably one of the greatest collection of talented teams put together that didn't win at all.
Wow. I remember watching Scottie playing in Portland. It was just weird watching him be in a Portland Trailblazers uniform. After seeing him 6 years with the Bulls, I'm like, it just didn't seem right. Yeah,
and then later go to Houston, and that didn't seem right at all either. So it, you just, and when you're in communities like that, it's just totally different. You could see when you lived in Portland, you could see a player in the grocery store, and so guys could go around and live their lives and not really live it in a fishbowl there in Portland.
Right.
That happens in Los Angeles a lot too.
Sure.
Most people will have a story of how they've seen somebody out. That's why I think a guy like Clayton Kershaw was such a fit for Los Angeles because he just totally gets it and he understands, and it's not about him. And he was just the perfect type of guy. And I'm so happy that he got a chance to finally win a title.
Finally. How many years has he been there at the Dodgers? He's been there for a while now, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's double digits in terms of seasons, I think. And,
wow.
And probably carried the load for most of the way. And then just been on the outside looking in when everybody else won titles.
Right. Finally got his due. Do you think he's going to get a contract extension after this win? You think they're going to give him some more money?
I don't really think you can.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like one of those where you just kind of wait to see what happens. But, I think most guys later on in their lives after they retire, they probably wish they would have stayed and figured out a 1-year deal that maybe didn't pay as much. But hopefully you've done your job of saving. And then
exactly.
You can enjoy the end of your career. That's what I would hope that a guy would end up doing.
That reminds me of the saying from what's the running back from Seahawks that just retired, played 2 games in the playoffs. You got to count your chickens. I can't think of his name now. The Skittle guy.
How about the lineman a couple of weeks ago? I think he was with the Ravens or something. I mean, he went down in the second half with an ACL or whatever, and just that week he had signed a $99 million extension. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, here he is probably facing a tough road coming back from an injury like that, and now has the security that at least he had signed.
Ooh, just in time. By weeks. $9 million. Oh, I'm out for the season. Oh, shoot. Ice this sucker.
Yeah, I mean, because the long line of guys who didn't save their money is almost longer than the ones who were successful with their money. So, if you can get those opportunities, man, that is a stroke of luck right there.
Yeah.
Wow. A blessing. Yeah,
it is. What do you think? There used to be a loyalty in basketball, like Michael Jordan and Scotty and those guys. There is extreme loyalty, but I just don't see that loyalty to the organization anymore. Because is that because the salary cap's been removed now, and they just want to see what they can do with free market, and there's more revenue for them?
I think so, but I think it goes back further than that. I just think it's loyalty in general. I mean, I think that, I saw guys when they came for their first season with the Lakers, no matter how successful they had been, there's just something about seeing all those trophies upstairs in the office there together and putting on that uniform for the first time. And you just don't get that anymore. You don't think of the passion of being a Chicago Bear because you don't any longer think of Ditka or Butkus and the history that goes along with it. Maybe that's just the way guys are raised, but it does become more of a free agent market that, you know what, I deserve more, I'll go somewhere else. And then later in their career, they're begging to get on a team that might have a chance to get a sniff at a title. So I think it was just, most guys didn't want to leave once they got to an organization that they dreamed of. However many years, 13, 14, 15 years full-time with ESPN. I mean, my goodness, I remember when I was young in the business thinking, can you imagine working at the place that that was considered to be the top of your profession? And so, and you never tire of that.
It just dawned on me, of all the players I can think of that have that loyalty to a franchise, it's been Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Those only two.
Yeah.
Everybody else kind of jumped ship, but they stayed true to their organization. They, for whatever reason, they had that loyalty to the team, the unity to the teammates. They just wanted to leave that. They didn't want to maybe rebuild.
Yeah, and 2 years before that, we lost one in Dirk Nowitzki in Dallas,
right? Yeah,
because he had spent his entire career in one place, and you saw the emotions that meant to go around the league and see other cities giving you standing ovations because they once booed you, but they realized that it's very rare that they're seen in their lifetime someone again who, who like the Yankees have gone through sometimes or whatever, where you're able to actually spend, your career.
Wow. Yeah, you think in the corporate world now, no one spends 20 years at a corporate position anymore. It just doesn't happen like it used to. They have changed.
No, and I think that's sometimes, I think if you read some corporate bylaw, basically philosophies, you'll see that sometimes that's meant to be on both ways. I don't particularly agree with that. But, there's a lot of organizations that believe that if you're constantly keeping transition in employees, it's going to make you a better place. But I think, I think that's yet to be proven as something you want to do time and time again.
Well, if you had to do it all over again, Dave, what would you do in your life if you had to do it all over again in your career?
I honestly, I don't think I'd change it.
Really?
At first, it would have been to stay in an area that I lived in for a little bit longer or for the rest of your life, just to see what would have happened, like a Lexington, Kentucky or Dallas, Texas. Sure. But then again, it's like, man, if any of you who are watching or listening to this have had the experience to be broad-based, you know what? I think I've met so many people and seen so many lifestyle changes by living on the East Coast and the West Coast and the Northeast or the Northwest. It just, you can never trade that in for a better learning experience. And I'm sure you thought that, with anybody that served our country,
Absolutely. Right.
So.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. Today is the Marine Corps birthday, and I asked Dave to join me last week, and he scratched us in. But today, being the birthday it is, and then everything going on, and we just had to celebrate something. The Marine Corps birthday, let's celebrate the Dodgers and the Lakers winning some championships.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not the Marine Corps because I didn't get a chance to be around that. But I'll tell you what, getting a chance to experience the Army-Navy game one time, being able to go and tour West Point and see a Saturday afternoon football game there. I mean, you just realize, and then meeting with the coaches about a year ago before Navy played in a bowl game, We'd get done with the meeting with players and coaches, and we're just like, these are professionals. These are military men playing sports, because they are just so up and above the level of any normal athlete that we talk to, because they're just cut a different way. And they, you don't often meet with players and they say, yes, sir. It just doesn't happen. But, or they don't, they ask you about how you're doing and how your day is and
very rare.
What'd you do last night? And, you just don't get that. So it's the sign of respect that comes from that level is amazing.
Pretty awesome. Wow. Well, I guess we'll cap that off with that one with respect to our military, top of the Lakers and the Dodgers winning world championships. But thanks, Dave, for joining us, and thanks for your time. And I know you're a busy guy over there. Just wanted to do a little memory of all those organizations out there adding value and giving something other than what's going on right now in our lives.
I'll always take a chance to just hit pause on real life and reflect back a little bit. Always glad to join you, Mark.